Hi everyone, it's William. This is the Grand Duke Dmitri 1921 Diary series, and today I'm in the little game room at Schatz Alp. It's, you can't see it, but it's got chess pieces and dominoes up around on the wallpaper, up around the ceiling, and the bookshelves you see behind me contain the English language library, which is fantastic. And these shelves weren't originally in the room. They came later, but by the time Dmitri was here, so the place was built between 1899 and 1900, and by the time Dmitri came here at the end of the 1930s, it changed quite a bit. So I'm not sure, but I would guess probably the English library had already been moved into this room and the shelves built, because they too weren't originally here, the bookcases and the shelves. Okay, so I decided not to record in Dimitri's room or another place at Chateau that was used frequently by him, because I want to save that. I think after we're finished with 1921, I'm going to go ahead and do the Chateau diary entries. And alas, it won't be that far in the future, because the diaries, the 1921 diary only goes through the end of April. I've been delaying telling you that because, well, it makes me so sad, and it'll probably make you sad too. But there is more. I shouldn't say it only goes through the end of April, but the diary entries are sparser after the end of April, and they're shorter. But we'll still cover those. Okay, so we are now back 2 weeks in time from what we did yesterday. So a recap of yesterday, the end of the long diary entry, was just a bad experience in the church during the Paschal service that Dmitri had trying to maintain a reverent frame of mind, and ending up angry and frustrated because of the behavior of people lurching forward to receive the Eucharist and sort of trampling on other people. Okay, so our cast today is the two most significant women in Dimitri's life at this time, Chanel and Grand Duchess Maria. And so we're at 16th April, which was a Saturday, and we are back at the Hotel Majestic in Vichy, and not Dimitri's favorite place, if you saw the previous videos when he was in Vichy. All right, here we go. The weather has undergone a surprising change. When I got up in the morning, it was so cold in the room that it actually reminded me of winter. The sky was completely gray, and it was raining, and a very strong wind was blowing. I had coffee with cocoa in our rooms, and around 11 o'clock we went out. Despite the weather, we took a little walk, but it was quite unpleasant. We lunched in the hotel, then took another walk, but this time it was just impossible. It started snowing heavily, covering the roads, and nature became so sad that it was impossible to bear. We dined at home and then went to the cinema. It was sad. Coco is overall in a state of extreme melancholy. She is sad that tomorrow our trip comes to an end, and she's all the time thinking that I am most awfully bored and that I hated my time at Monte Carlo and Vichy. Though I had an awfully nice time, I am pleased to come back. That is, of course, black ingratitude toward Coco, but I am not content to wander around France in a morganatic situation. And then I want to get back to Paris, to Maria. The more so since the 19th is her birthday, and I would not miss that day for anything. Okay, that is it. We have the word sad used 3 times, and also the word melancholy. So our poet is back. You might remember from 1906, 1907, that Dmitri had moments in his diaries when he talked about things like the plaintive cry of an owl at night, and he could be very poetic. And our poet is definitely back this time with this extraordinary sentence, and nature became so sad that it was impossible to bear. So, not extraordinary in the sense that it's brilliant poetry, although it's very nice, it's certainly very nice, but extraordinary in the sense that that's the way he was thinking. When he was out on this walk with Coco, he wasn't thinking about nature becoming hostile, say with this weather, the rain and the cold and the wind and the gray sky, or nature becoming, gloomy. He was equating it with sadness. He doesn't use the word for gloomy. And that seems to be what he's saying is impossible to bear. I mean, also the weather, nobody wants to walk in conditions like that. But it seems that his depression at a mild level is back, although he has more or less denied it and said that Coco is the one who's depressed. But anyway, it's a nice interval. And then he goes on to tell us, yes, they had dinner, they went to the cinema. It was sad. We went to the cinema, it was sad. I don't think he's saying they went to a sad movie, although certainly that's possible. So, because he follows it up by saying Coco is overall in a state of extreme melancholy. He doesn't just use the word for melancholy, he says extreme melancholy. So is this projection? Is it because his own depression is creeping back? Or is Coco really as depressed as he thinks she is? Is he sort of wanting to reverse the role a little bit, where Coco was the one who saved him from his depression, and now he's the good friend who is commiserating with her depression? I don't know. It could be any of those things, or gradations of those things. So the trip, let us say, was not a resounding success in terms of their relationship. It was a success in terms of getting Dmitri out of the real depths of depression. If he's depressed now, it's just mildly. But it wasn't really a success in terms of the two of them coming together. And again, they don't seem to be communicating very well. So Coco is still convinced, according to him, that he was bored and had a bad time. Even, he says, hated my time at Monte Carlo. And he's saying, well, that wasn't the case at all. I had an awfully nice time. And, they're miscommunicating. They're not really understanding each other. And I get the impression that Dmitri isn't very forthcoming. He might just say to her, oh, no, I had a nice time. But she's not convinced. And so they're not quite gelling at this point. But it seems like later on they did, although I don't know. But at this point, it's not working really well. And one of the reasons, probably, is this great longing he has to be back with his sister. And on the one hand, it's not surprising or not something that we should criticize, because let's face it, he'd lost his father, his half-brother, his Nicholas and Alexandra and their children, his aunt. Both of them had lost so many people, and then they'd been separated for 1917, 1919, 1917, 1918, and part of 1919. And so, yes, it makes sense that they would cling to each other a little bit in this new world that they had entered. And yet, as they had always been there for each other. They'd always been sort of circling the wagons around each other, because even when they were kids and they were all the time irritated with each other, they still had the assurance of having each other, no matter where they were moved to by the relatives. They had each other until Maria got married. And I think that relationship, more or less continued. In the late 30s, in her diaries, Maria talked somewhat bitterly about being disillusioned with Dmitri and what her expectations for him had been. But at any rate, yeah, they were sort of joined at the hip, and everybody knew it. And that was, so I was told by Paul Alinsky, was one of the reasons that for the failure of Dmitri's marriage, in his opinion. And certainly, as we've seen, Gulia was also troubled by Dmitri's close presence in Maria's life. So it wasn't a great situation for spouses. But anyway, what else is there to say? Just that I need to adjust my translations because part of this is written in English. This whole section where he says, she is sad that tomorrow our trip comes to an end, and she's all the time thinking that I am most awfully bored, and that I hated my time at Monte Carlo and Vichy, though I had an awfully nice time. All that is in English. And he's using the word awfully. And I think I more often use the word terribly. And so I need to switch to awfully. The reason I've been using terribly is awfully isn't really a word that we use so much anymore. Terribly is much more common. But I want to use the words that he used. Okay, what next? What next? Well, indeed, what next? What will we have next time? Well, the diary entry for the 17th of April, although it's one of the daily diary entries, is a very long one. So much so that I'm going to have to split it in two. And the first part of it will be the drive home from Vichy to Paris. And it will be an interesting trip. They'll encounter some obstacles, and yeah, it's well worth reading or watching the video. The second part will be more about the relationship, both with Coco and with Maria. So you'll want to come back for both of those, and I hope to see you next time, probably in a different location within the hotel. And yeah, see you then. Bye.